Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Putri Zuliarti Tiara. Here I want to present to you about the instruction media Cuisenaire rods. This media aims to help students understand about the concept of operating fraction, to present a mathematical concept in real form, and to help students understand about the concept of equivalent fraction. This media use the concept of operating fraction. The things that we use in this media is made of styrofoam, which are cut into cuboids or rods of various size and wrapped in the manila paper and the metallic paper. In this media, we have 6 positive integers. Brown rod for number 1, pink rod for number 2, blue rod for number 3, silver rod for number 4, red rod for number 5, and the last, purple rod for number 6. These media have general requirements. Fractions consist of the numerator and the denominator. For example, A over B, then A is numerator and B is denominator. The rod of the numerator is on the top of the rod of denominator. The use of media for equivalent fractions. Example 1. The fraction 2 over 4. This fraction can also be said to be 1 over 2 fraction or 1/2 because the silver rod is twice the length of pink rod. Represent the fraction 2 over 6. This fraction can also be said to be a 1/3 or 1 over 3 fraction because the purple rod is 3 times the length of the pink rod. How to use Cuisenaire rods media for adding fraction. The rules of this media for adding fractions, which are: first, if the denominator or bottom rod of two fractions to operate is the same, then we just need to add the numerators or top rod of the two fractions. The second is if the denominator of the two fractions to be operated is different, then we must find the common denominator by adding each of the fractions to itself until the both of fractions have the same length rod for the bottom rod or denominator. The third is after both of denominator rods have the same length, then we add both of top rod or numerator by looking for rods that match or have the same size as the number of our numerators. The fourth is the last rod that we have is the answer of the operations. Example 1. 3 over 4 plus 2 over 4. Put the rods for 3 over 4 fractions, where the blue rods are placed on the top of silver rods, and for 2 over 4 fractions, where the pink rods are placed on the top of silver rod. This means that blue rods have a value of 3 over 4 to silver rod, and pink rod have a value of 2 over 4 to silver rod. Combining the blue and pink rods, give the sum of two fractions, which is the same length as a red rod. Because it's compared to a silver rod, then we have a red rod are placed on top of a silver rod. This indicates that the sum of 3 over 4 and 2 over 4 is equal to 5 over 4. Example 2. 1 over 2 plus 1 over 3. Put the rods for 1 over 2 fractions where the brown rods are placed on the top of the pink rod, and for 1 over 3 fractions where the brown rods are placed on the top of the blue rod. This means that brown rod have a value of 1 over 2 pink rod and brown rod have a value of 1 over 3 to blue rod. Because the denominator of two fractions to be operated is different, then we must find the common denominator by adding each of the rod to itself until the both of the bottom rod have the same length. It turns out that the length is the same when the bottom rods are lined up 3 pink rods and 2 blue rods. These 3 pink rods or 2 blue rods have the same length with one purple rod, so 6 is the common denominator. For the top rod or numerator, we have 3 brown rods. This means that 1 over 2 can be expressed as equivalent fractions of 3 over 6. For the top rod or numerator, we have 2 brown rods. This means that 1 over 3 can be expressed as equivalent fraction of 2 over 6. When we combine pink rod and blue rod, give the sum of the two fractions, which is the same length as a red rod. Because it is compared to a purple rod, then we have a red rod are placed on the top of a purple rod. This indicates that the sum of 1 over 2 and 1 over 3 is equal to 5 over 6. How to use media for subtracting fractions. The rules of this Cuisenaire rods media for subtracting fractions. First, if the denominator or bottom rod of the two fractions to operate is the same, then we just need to subtract the numerators or top rods of the two fractions. The second, if the denominator of the two fractions to be operated is different, then we must find the denominator by adding each of the fractions to itself until the both of fractions have the same length rod for the bottom rod or denominator. The third, after both of denominator rods have the same length, then we subtract both of top rod or numerator. The fourth, to subtract the numerator, we put the rod of the number subtracted on the top of the rod of number subtractions. Then the result is the remaining rods that satisfy the number subtracted. The fifth, The last rod that we have is the answer of the operations. Example 1. 4 over 2 minus 1 over 2. Put the rods for 4 over 2 fractions, where the silver rods are placed on the top of the pink rod. And for 1 over 2 fractions, we put the rod where the brown rods are placed on the top of the pink rod. This means that the silver rod have a value of 4 over 2 to pink rod, and a brown rod have a value of 1 over 2 to pink rod. Since the denominator is equal, then we need to subtract the numerators, which are silver rod and brown rod. To subtract the numerator, we put the silver rod on the top of the brown rod. Then the rod that satisfies the number subtracted is the blue rod. So there are 3 units are remaining. Because it's compared to a pink rod or denominator rod, then we have a blue rod are placed on the top of pink rod. This indicates that the result of 4 over 2 minus 1 over 2 is equal to 3 over 2. Example 2. 2 over 3 minus 1 over 2. Put the rod for 2 over 3 fractions where the pink rod are placed on the top of the blue rod. And for 1 over 2 fractions, we put the rod of the brown rod are placed on the top of the pink rod. This means that the pink rod have a value of 2 over 3 to blue rod, and a brown rod have a value of 1 over 2 to pink rod. Since the denominator is different, then we find the common denominator by adding each of the rod to itself until the both of bottom rod have the same length. It turns out that the length is the same when the bottom are lined up 2 blue rods and 3 pink rods. These 2 blue rods or 3 pink rods have the same length with one purple rod, so 6 is a common denominator. The top rod numerator we have 2 pink rods. This means that 2 over 3 can be expressed as equivalent fractions of 4 over 6. For the top rod numerator, we have 3 brown rods. This means that 1 over 2 can be expressed as equivalent fraction (3 over 6). To subtract the numerator, we put the silver rod on the top of the blue rod. Then the rod that satisfies the number subtracted is the brown rod. So there are 1 unit remaining. because it is compared to a purple rod or denominator rod, then we have a brown rod are placed on the top of the purple rod. This indicates that the result of 2/3 minus 1/2 is equal to 1/6.